Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Hunter, and I'm the Spiritual Director of the Center for Spiritual Living, Victoria. It's lovely to have you here with me today. If you haven't been here before, and if you would like to join us in person sometime on Sunday, we have our regular services every Sunday morning in the Cook Street Village Activity Center at 380 Cook Street in Victoria. We'd be delighted to meet you there. We have meditation at 10:30, and our regular service is at 11. Meanwhile, it's good to have you here online today. I'm starting a new theme today based on a book by Joel Goldsmith, and it's called The Thunder of Silence. And that's the title of my talk today as well. And it may seem a strange title and something that's a bit of a brain twister when you think about it, because we don't often think of silence as being thunder, but it is really what is in the silence, what comes to us in the silence, that is what is thunderous when we actually get messages that are important to us and messages that help us to get on with our lives in a much better way and to reach a higher and better place in our lives. So I'm going to begin with that today. I'm really fond of saying to people when they're stressed out, and to myself as well, you know, why why pray when you can worry? Should be the other way around, but why pray when you can worry? Don't we spend an inordinate amount of time worrying about things in our lives that we feel we don't have a lot of control over, and that's what creates the worry. And so that's where I'm going to go today with this talk. And one of the things that I ask you to remember throughout the talk and afterward is that there is only one power in the universe. One power, not many. There is no duality. We are not separate from God, Spirit, Source, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It is part of us. You know, we're one with everything. And this is not a new notion. This is an ancient one. But the thing is that there is now scientific proof that it is so, that we all come from subatomic waves, particles, thought into being. And that's a whole other talk and a whole other series. And there are lots of books out there that you can read about it if you want to. But keep in mind, there is one mind, and that mind is the mind of God. That is the intelligence, the creative force, the power of the universe. As Dr. Ernest Holmes, our founder, used to say, he started every radio broadcast with this: there's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. And so it's important that we remember that we can access this, we can use it. And the important thing is understanding how to do that in a way where it really works, where we are really, really connected. You know, I often say that in the silence, there are many answers. And I really like that as well. But it means we have to get into the silence to get those answers. And the thunder is that mighty voice of God that occurs when we make that perfect connection with the divine. You know, when we get the answers to go forward in our lives, when we feel that connection, when we feel the presence. Joel Goldsmith calls God the presence. He uses other names as well, but primarily the presence, when he's talking about what it is that we need to connect with. The presence is within us. And so if you think about that, a presence inside us, in our hearts, in our souls, then, you know, perhaps we can be more mindful about how we connect with it and how we pray. The thing is that our highest and best does not come from cries for help. You know, when we're really stressed out, we might be begging, beseeching God, you know, please, please, God, help me. You know, if you'll just help me this time, I promise I'll never do this again. I'll never let this happen again. How many times have you done that? I've been guilty of that a few times myself, way back in the past. Now I know better. I know that I don't beg God. I don't barter with God. I don't beseech God to help me. What I do know is that if I go into the most prayerful state that I can imagine, that I am in a place of divine silence, I'm in a place where I'm oblivious to absolutely everything else that's going on around me. And so it's kind of interesting to think about how you get there. And a few days ago, when I was working at my computer, my office is down the hall, a significant distance rather, from my living room. And I had music playing through the television set in the living room. And it was just random, easy listening that I was listening to, or half listening to, as I was working, and it wasn't very loud. And I was immersed in my work, what I was doing, excuse me, and all of a sudden I heard the words from an old hymn. And I don't typically hear hymns on television, but there it was. And I heard the lyrics, "I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses." And excuse me, and the voice I hear as I tarry there, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me and he talks with me. And he tells me I'm not alone. And it goes on to say that this voice is always there, that this presence is always there, this being is always there in the garden. And as I was listening to it, it's a beautiful, beautiful old hymn. I just felt my heart expand. And I really felt this holy presence within. That music and those lyrics from my childhood actually took me to that place. And there are other ways to get there for sure, but that was one where it was instantly available to me. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to just feel that warmth in my heart, to feel it expanding in a significant way, to know that I was connected right then and right there. And what a perfect time it was to pray. Because why would I pray if I couldn't feel that God was present? That if I couldn't feel that this higher power was there to listen to me, but more than anything, for me to listen to it. That Joel Goldsmith and Ernest Holmes and many of the great luminaries say the same thing. They say that connection can always be found, and that's the place that we need to get to in order to have an answer to our prayers, in order to have miracles happen in our lives. And it means that we need to get rid of a whole lot of stuff that's going on for us to be there. And that's where meditation really helps a lot. When we can learn to meditate, and Joel Goldsmith says, when we start to meditate, of course, we have thoughts going by. But there comes a point when we just release them. Comes a point when we're able to do that. And when we release them, then we are basically in a place of emptiness. But the thing is, rather than being empty, we are empty of thoughts. We are empty of worry. We're empty of fear. But we are filled with the divine presence. And these luminaries also say that God knows everything that we need. We don't have to be telling God what we need. Why would I think that when there is this awesome power that is everything that I can imagine in the entire universe, why would I think that it isn't big enough to know what's going on for me? To know what I really need in my life, rather than perhaps what I say that I want. Because it's so easy for us to get into prayer and to ask God for specific things. But Goldsmith says we need to get into this divine emptiness, and that's where we know everything. How do we know everything? Why do we know everything? Because that divine being, God, is part of who we are. Each one of us is, I like to say, a spark of God stuff. This power and presence lives within us. It is all around us. It is above us, below us, beside us, back of us, front of us. It is everywhere present. And it fills our beings, except that we step aside from it. We do that mentally. We do that with our thoughts, with our minds, because we forget. We forget to connect. We forget that this presence is even within us. And somehow our ego minds start to think that we are bigger. And so we can just kind of snap our fingers, use God as the Aladdin's lamp, that if I rub it, a genie will appear. I give my 3 wishes to the genie and they're going to come true. That's not the kind of prayer that we're talking about. We're talking about the prayer that is so soulful, that is so deep within us, that is so much a part of us, we might not even know what it is. And our lives might be in a state of chaos. Funny thing about that, before we break through into a higher place, it's kind of like we get turned upside down. Sometimes our lives get turned upside down. I remember Marianne Williamson saying that when she finished the Course in Miracles, not when she began, but when she finished it, that it was like a wrecking ball was taken to her life. And she didn't recognize her life anymore. It was turned upside down, inside out, and backward. It happened to me when I finished my ministerial studies as well. It doesn't have to happen to us if we remember the truth of who we are. We might feel that we're a little unstable now and then as we are going through transformation in our lives. But the thing is, God knows what it is we need. My dear friend Perry Dickinson, who used to be my music director in Vancouver, sang a beautiful song saying, I may not get what I want, but I get what I need. What I want isn't necessarily what's best for me, but I do get what I need. And ultimately, that is what's best. And so, when we look at this, when we think about it, for centuries, people have prayed for an end to wars, an end to pestilence, an end to disease. A lot of people are certainly praying for an end to disease right now as we're continuing to go through this COVID pandemic. It is now in what it's called the 4th wave. And the other day I heard somebody mentioning that there's probably a 5th one on the way. Well, let's not think about that. But if we really want healing in our lives and healing on this planet, it's not about begging God. It's not about saying, oh, please, please, please take this COVID thing away right now, never to return. I find myself doing that in my prayers. The thing is to go deeply inside where we come to a place of inner peace. And in that place of inner peace, everything is perfect. We live in divine perfection. And from that place, anything that is unlike perfection in our lives can be healed when we realize that we are connecting with God. When we feel that connection, and it is a feeling. With me, it begins with a feeling of warmth that starts in the middle of my heart center. And then I feel it expanding and growing until my entire chest is just filled with this warmth. Sometimes it brings tears. Those tears really, really tell me that I am really connected. Not only am I connected, but there is a holy presence there that is taking in absolutely everything that's going on in my life and has solutions. And in the silence, I will find the many answers. When we pray from our minds, from our thoughts, we're interfering with that divine flow. Think about it. That's where we are in our ego minds. We're using our thoughts, our ideas. Now the thing is that we can create a place of peace with our thoughts. It just depends upon what those thoughts are. But we can get into a state of meditation where we're really connected using those thoughts. If we really, really are intent upon doing that, and if we allow ourselves to just let go of all of the busyness in our minds and the busyness in our lives, and just know that we are, in the garden, talking with God. And as we go into that beautiful silent place, then God is talking to us, and that's the place we need to be. When we pray by rote, And I don't know about you, but that's what I was taught to do as a little girl. The Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. And on it goes. I can remember repeating that so often as a little child. And the thing is that I didn't even know what those words meant. They were just words. It was just noise coming out of my mouth. And that's really what a lot of prayers are, what a lot of affirmations are. And I've never been crazy about affirmations for that reason, because they are rote. What we're trying to do is to program our minds. And as we program our minds, we are hopeful that we will start to create a better life for ourselves one way or another. And it can work to a degree, but it is not to the nth degree. There is always some of us, some of our thoughts and ideas about what we want in our lives that's mixed up in that. And really, we're to get to a place of thy will, not my will. Thy will be done. And to know that we are really, really connecting with Source at the innermost place. This is nothing new. This teaching has been around in various forms for centuries, but it was also in the Bible. And as I was growing up, and I loved to go to church when I was a little girl, when I was growing up, I never heard anything like that in the Bible. More than anything, I heard the minister saying that we had to pray, and that that we had to pray powerfully, and we had to promise God that we would be good, and all of those kinds of things, because if we didn't, then we were probably doomed. Well, that's old-time religion that we just don't buy into anymore. And we have on this planet humans who are capable of great intellect and great thought. And it's been very, very difficult for them to accept the teachings from long, long ago, because a lot of them don't make any sense. But in the book of Matthew, Matthew says, when ye pray, use not vain repetitions as heathens do. Use not vain repetitions as heathens do. For they think they will be heard because of their much speaking, but they won't. Well, I was astonished when I read that this week, because I didn't know that that was anywhere in the Bible. To me, in Christianity especially, people spoke a lot when they were praying. And certainly in Science of Mind, we kind of get into that place where we do a lot of talking to God. And I wonder how much listening we really, really do. So again, it's ancient wisdom. And we really need to take heart with those words, with the teaching, that it's not all about that. So how does this fit with Science of Mind, with the teachings of our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes? Well, we believe in the power of prayer in this teaching. We know that it works. But there are people who will say, well, I've been praying for a long time and nothing's happening. Things aren't working. And something that's really interesting, when I'm teaching classes, in many of the classes, I will teach 5-step prayer, which is a gift from Dr. Holmes to all of us. He gave us a formula for prayer, a scientific formula for prayer that works. Now, again, this may seem like a contradiction to what Joel Goldsmith is saying, where Joel Goldsmith says, get your minds out of it, get your thoughts out of it, just go into the silence. But the interesting thing is that in 5-step prayer, and it's something that I haven't really focused upon a lot when I've been teaching it, I haven't focused upon this concept so much. It's about recognizing God. The first step, of course, is recognition. And the second step is unification. And the third is realization. And the fourth is gratitude. And the fifth is release. So basically, if we want to make it really simple, and I try to make it really simple for people, because a lot of people seem to think there's a lot of mystery around it. And so I'll just say, if you just say, God is and I am, and thank you for and I have perfect health, thank you, and so it is, you're going through the 5 steps of prayer. But that can so easily become rote. And that's not in our feeling nature. And what Dr. Holmes teaches is that the first step is the most important step. The first step is recognition. And that's where, God is all there is. God is the sun, the moon, the stars. God is everything in the cosmos. God is the cosmos. God is every blade of grass. God is every grain of sand. God is every breeze, every leaf on every tree, every drop of water in the great blue sea. God is you. God is me. God is that beautiful little baby. God is that sweet puppy. Anything that we see, God is the sunrise and the sunset. God is the rain. God is our breath. God is the beat of our hearts. What we need to do is to go through a lengthy process of recognition of God, of what God is. And when I say lengthy, I mean really, really focus upon God in everything and in everyone. Focus upon it until you feel your heart starting to open up. Because when it opens up, that's where God is in expression. That's where we feel the presence. That's where we communicate with the presence. And anything that happens after that really isn't important, because we are in the process then of manifestation, of accepting our highest and best. And if somebody asks for prayer, and I've often shared this in a class, I was on a minister's prayer list, well, I still am, but where I do a prayer for all of the ministers on our listserv once a month. It's on the 17th day of each month. But it used to be that people used to be able to email, and if I were on duty for an entire day, people could email me and request prayer, and then I would either talk to them on the phone or I would send them a prayer. And I had a woman who got in touch with me, and she obviously was very new. I don't know if she'd ever been in Science of Mind at all. She was simply asking for prayer, and she may have just looked up this international prayer line. But she said that she had just gone through a divorce with her husband, that he had left her for someone else, and she was heartbroken, and she was in a whole lot of pain. And she said, I want you to pray that he will fall in love with me again and marry me again. Well, that's not the way that it works. And, I don't like to say that to people. And so what I did was I told her that I would send her a prayer. And the prayer that I sent her said that she was loved beyond measure, that there's this higher power at work in her life, and that love is hers. Love of self, love for others, love from others. That what comes to her is reflected back to others in her life. And that as she felt that, and as she acknowledged that, and as she lived with that she would have the highest and best relationship with her perfect partner. And that's what we do. We will say this or better. Now, I didn't say that she would get back with her husband again, because that's just not what we do. But what we do is that we know for that person that God is at work, and that something much better is happening for that person. I mean, imagine the number of times that you might have prayed to have something specific happen in your life. It's called outlining. Like this woman who wanted her ex-husband to fall in love with her again and marry her. We don't outline. I mean, how many times have we perhaps done that kind of prayer in the past before we knew about this? And as we did that kind of prayer, we recognize now that if that prayer had come true, it would have been a disaster. We can see the gift in having struggled through something and come to the other side and having a higher awareness and a better life as a result of it. And so that's what happens in the silence. Dr. Holmes himself only prayed in silence. I didn't know that. I always wanted to know, what words does he use when he prays? How does he do it? And then I learned through reading books about him that he didn't, that he simply went directly to God. And he was capable, he did perform what we would call miracles. He just said they were natural occurrences. Stories about a tree dying in the garden of his church, Founders Church in Los Angeles, when he was away. And he came back and someone said, "Oh, Dr. Holmes, one of the trees has died. That beautiful, beautiful tree has died." And he went out to look at the tree and it was looking pretty dismal. The trees around it were all fine. And he simply put his arms around the tree and went into the silence. Stood there for about 10 minutes in silence and went back into the office. And 3 days later, there were buds on the branches and the sap was flowing in the tree again, and it lived. There's a story that I've often told about him traveling with a protege of his, Dr. Jack Hornaday. And Dr. Hornaday was driving a car that had automatic windows in it before that was really trendy. And Dr. Holmes had his hand on the windowsill of the car. And Jack Hornaday didn't notice that, pushed the button to roll up the window, and Ernest Holmes' little finger was crushed. And Dr. Hornaday pulled over and he said, "We've got to get you to the hospital right away. We've got to get you help." And Dr. Holmes said, "No." He said, "It's fine." He just sat there with his hand around his pinky finger and just held it gently for 10 minutes. Just sat in silence. And when he took his hand away, the crushed finger was whole. There was no bleeding. There was no sign of any kind of injury. That's the Jesus kind of stuff that we heard about in the Bible. Those are the kinds of things. The thing is, those things are possible for all of us, not just for one or two people. But we also have to understand how it happens, where it comes from. And it comes from a deep, deep connection with the divine, with the source of all good, with the creative power of the universe. We need to understand that God knows. And what have we got to lose by allowing that? That's where the magic begins. Joel Goldsmith says that words and thoughts can't reach God, so prayers aren't answered. If we're just in words and thoughts and we wonder why our prayers aren't being answered, that's the reason why. God is not on the surface of minds. We tend to think there's this being out there somewhere. And if we speak loudly enough, that being is going to respond. No, not at all. God is not out there, not on the surface. God is deep within our hearts. And each of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, we have a deep desire to know God. We may have turned that off years ago. We may have lost faith in any kinds of teachings that have the word God in them. Doesn't matter what you call God, you can call God anything you want, and it responds. So don't get caught up in that. Excuse me. Just understand that you just have to understand the presence. There is so much around us that we don't even know is there, that we're not aware of. I have a couple of friends who see angels. They can describe them in detail, and they're not all white and fluffy. They all have a different look to them. Angels, archangels, spirit guides. The thing is, what we need to remember is there is only one. And, excuse me, and then whatever we happen to see, whatever others happen to see, they're all part of God. And so we need to get into that feeling place within. Excuse me, there must be something in the air here tonight that's choking me a bit. And I apologize for that. Excuse me. So, how do we describe that feeling? What's it like for you? I told you what it's like for me. It might be different for you. Sometimes when I get a response I will say that I could feel the words rather than hearing them. I could feel them, which is a very strange thing to say, but that's what it's like for me. And that's when I know that the connection is there. Abraham Hicks, if you've read any of her books, if you've read Ask and It Is Given, which is a wonderful book, it's not about spirituality. It's really about how to use this creative force, this power. She says if we can get into that feeling place for 13 seconds, if we have identified before we get into prayer, if we thought, well, what we want is a new relationship or wonderful relationship, give up the idea, but get into the feeling nature and hold it for 13 seconds, and it has to manifest. It's amazing how long 13 seconds can be. So what is it that creates these feelings? For me, it's usually meditation. I can sit and just, start to meditate, turn off my thoughts, my ideas, and simply get into the silence. And after a bit, I feel this warmth beginning in the center of my chest. But sometimes there are things that take me there. When I mentioned that I heard that old hymn playing in my living room, coming down the hall to me the other day, and I immediately felt my heart expand. It's not just an old hymn that will do it, but a friend of mine gave me a collection of Mozart's music a number of years ago. He recorded it. It was on a CD, and it was just called Mozart in the Morning. This joyful, beautiful music of Mozart. And as soon as that starts to play, again, my heart expands. So music does it for me. Nature does it. If I'm out in nature, out in a forest, those amazing trees, I feel it. When I'm looking at the ocean, I feel it. A beautiful sunrise, a beautiful sunset. Looking at a lovely child, at a baby, little puppy dogs. So many things that just, when I say it melts my heart, that's what happens. It's melting other stuff away where only love prevails. And so find what works for you, because when you do, that's where the treasures are. If our lives have been upside down, we can know that there are treasures out there. And the thing is not to wallow in the challenges, to wallow in the upside down life. Instead, to let the thoughts go, to let the worry go, and to allow the prayer to be silent. Absolutely knowing that God knows. I don't have to know, because God knows. It can be a bit of a brain twister until you start practicing it. And then when you do, when you start feeling this feeling, you don't have the need for words anymore. Ministers are so fond of using all kinds of fancy words to do prayer, and then so many people feel that they can't do it if fancy words don't work. I shouldn't say that. Perhaps if somebody is really, really connected and really feels the connection, it works. But so often it's just, a diatribe of words. Not to be disrespectful to other ministers, I do the same thing. And as I'm reading The Thunder of Silence, it is reminding me not to go there, not to be like that anymore. I want to remember, and I want everyone to remember, that the prayer of fulfillment is a prayer of silence. And I want to share a reading of Joel Goldsmith's with you in conclusion, because I think it's so relevant. And he uses old biblical terms. Please don't let that turn you off. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And he also uses he rather than she or it. Please make allowances for that, considering that this book was written a very long time ago when that was the way that the English language was used. So where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And where is that Spirit? Wherever we acknowledge him in all our ways, wherever we acquaint now ourselves with him and are at peace, whenever we learn to sit in quietness and stillness That is where the Spirit of the Lord is. And where that Spirit is, there is liberty and freedom from all forms of bondage, physical, moral, financial. The words we speak are not power, nor are the thoughts we think, but if we sit in a complete quiet, in the thundering silence, and keep our mind stayed on Thee, stayed on God, we arrive at a place where thoughts do not come anymore. And in a few moments, we begin to feel this inner peace that is known as realization. Realization is where it is all working. It is where we are connected and where the miracles are building up, where form is taking place, where we are manifesting, where God is manifesting, where we are co-creating in our lives. And Goldsmith says, prayer is our contact with God. It is the means through which God's grace performs. Its miracles are there in our experience. But prayer must be a listening attitude. It must be a willingness that the Spirit of God fill us and perform its functions in us and through us. So my prayer for all of you is that you, is that you find that silence within, that listening place, that listening post, where the presence is fully alive and awakened and aware within your consciousness, and where all good comes to you. And so it is. God bless you all. Thank you for being here today. And if you enjoyed this, if you would care to make a donation to our center, we would be very, very grateful for that. You can do so by going to our website at cslvictoria.org, or by sending an e-transfer to donate at CSL Victoria. Sorry, I'm getting this all mixed up today. I apologize. Donate at CSL Victoria, and that will get it there to us, and you'll receive a tax receipt for that. And if you would like to drop in some Sunday and meet us in person, we'd be joyful to welcome you. Also, if you are free on Thanksgiving Sunday, the 10th of October, we are having a turkey dinner after service. So that will begin around noon that Sunday. And you're more than welcome to come and join us. It will be a feast, to be sure, and everybody will enjoy it, and you'll get to meet some of the people who attend and get to interact with them. Thanks for being here today. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. And so it is.